If tomorrow you decided to set off without making any stops and only anchoring in the roadstead, how long could you really live on your boat? Or, to bring the focus back to these somewhat uncertain times, if tomorrow you couldn't return to port or were forced to leave, how long could you stay at sea without any problems? Sailing means many things, both practical and philosophical, but above all, sailing means being as self-sufficient as possible. Because being on a boat doesn't necessarily mean being free. Just a heads up, this video is long, and if you're interested in a particular topic, you can jump to it by clicking on the chapters below or in the description. Now, if you depend on the dock for energy, if you always have to return to port for water, if you have to go ashore to eat, then you're just on vacation. You're not truly free. In this video, I'll try to answer a very simple question, but one that I think is essential to ask yourself, especially when you even just think about sailing around the Mediterranean or crossing the Atlantic. How self-sufficient are you really? Self-sufficient, autonomous. Assuming you have a sound boat that doesn't need any major repairs, let's look at 5 main issues: energy, water, food, maintenance, and the cost of self-sufficiency. And finally, we'll look together at the most important thing of all. These things combined are really all you need to stay at sea indefinitely without depending on anyone. Keep in mind that after this video, you'll have a clear idea of what to do and how to behave on your boat to be self-sufficient. But know that sooner or later, you'll have to stop somewhere to haul out your boat and do an important check at some point. Energy on board. Modern boats are energy-hungry entities, just like humans. Having energy on board is essential because without it, we won't have a fridge, we won't have instruments, we won't have any comforts, not even a simple fan. But above all, without energy, there's no autonomy, unless you're some kind of modern-day ascetic. To know how much energy you need, you have to understand your boat systems. I'm using the Lila as an example because I know exactly how much energy it uses, and it's not a small amount. Not counting the starter batteries, the engine takes care of itself. On board, we have 2 important battery banks. One is for services, made up of 2 430 amp dual AGM batteries, and down here there's a battery bank with 480 amps. Still dual AGM amps, okay? We use them for the computer. For charging, we have a 90 amp alternator that we replaced the original one with. It used to be 55. We also have a master volt battery charger and 700 watts of solar panels supported by 3 Victron MPPT 120 regulators, giving us about 40 amps in constant lighting conditions. Obviously, we can't use the battery charger at anchor unless we have a power station or a portable generator. So we'll use the engine or the solar panels, but the engine burns diesel, so we might have limited reserves. The ideal choice is really the solar panels or a wind generator. They're what let you stay anchored without having to start the engine. In the case of Valela, having 700 watts is perfect for keeping the main services running, like lights and pumps. And especially the fridge motor, which eats up a lot of energy, especially the older models. Replacing it with a new one doesn't cost much. And for some time now, I've considered the watermaker a main service, because at this point, it's unthinkable not to have one on board. Then we have power available for instruments like the plotter, the transducer, and the autopilot, especially at night or when using radar, which really eats up energy. Lastly, we have a computer that uses about 300 watts in total, which we use to edit videos like this one. To sum up, solar panels plus a generator equals energy independence. We, as sailboats, have a big advantage over motorboats: the wind. In theory, we only need the engine to get into port, even though that's not always the case, especially in the summer and especially in the Mediterranean. In an ideal world, we could have 2 engines on board, one combustion and one electric, so that if needed, we'd never be left stranded, or rather left floating. That said, over time, I've realized something fundamental. It matters how much energy you produce, but even more important is how much you use. Only by optimizing your consumption will you be truly energy self-sufficient. So use your head, kid. Down there, use your head with both terminals, even more so. Water on board. I'd say that while you might be able to go without power for a few hours, you definitely can't go without water for a long time. I'm telling you this because for years we stayed at anchor, constantly shuttling back and forth between the boat and the nearest water fountain, loaded down with jerry cans. Without water, you're not going anywhere. No drinking water, no cooking, no showers, no cleaning, so no self-sufficiency. Here too, just like with energy, everything starts with one thing. One, understanding how much water you actually use. Just think, in Italy, the average per capita water consumption is about 230 liters. That's insane, Ombolayla. We have about 450 liters of water divided among 3 tanks, which gives us a good reserve. By optimizing our usage, the longest we've managed to make it last is 1 month. Still, without a system to produce it, we'd be limited, because sooner or later you run out of water, and when that happens, you either have to use jerry cans or head back to port. But if you have to go back to port, then you're not really self-sufficient. That's why the real game changer comes when you do this. When you install a water maker, because a marine water maker lets you turn seawater into fresh water right on board. In our case, as you know, we have a Urania Marina. It's an invert ES that produces 70 liters per hour. This means that if we keep it running for a couple hours a day, we have enough water for all our needs, including drinking water, since after remineralizing it with a filter, we drink it without any worries because it's pure water. In addition, we have a portable manual mini desalinator that produces about 2 liters of water per hour, but that's just for emergencies. And using it will give you arms this big. With a desalinator on board, actually 2, when you know you can make water anytime you want, the feeling of freedom is almost within reach, and your whole perception of anchoring out changes completely. Obviously, there are variables to consider here too, because a desalinator uses energy. So it needs to be perfectly integrated with your energy system. As we said, the more efficient you are with your energy consumption, the more water you can produce without any issues. That's why there are different models of desalinators suitable for boats. Then there's maintenance, which is essential to always have quality water and a reliable system over time. Filters, cleaning, membranes. And finally, there's management, because even if you have a desalinator, it doesn't make sense to waste water, since that means wasting the energy used to produce it. Remember that self-sufficiency doesn't mean unlimited abundance, but rather the balance between production and consumption. Also, by producing the water you need. You don't have to fill all the tanks, you'll weigh less, and you'll use less fuel if you have to use an engine. Tanks plus a water maker plus proper management equals water autonomy. And then we get to food. Total food self-sufficiency on a boat doesn't exist. Sure, on boats our size, if you have an airstrip, nuclear propulsion, and several decks you can farm, then you've won. You're self-sufficient as long as the boat stays afloat. Waterworld taught us that. Anyway, you can do a lot. Just think, you live on the sea, so you're literally floating on an incredibly unlimited resource of food. You have 3 main ways to get food. 1, do it yourself. 2, send your wife. 3, send the kids. Just kidding. Obviously, the 3 main ways to get food are fishing from the boat, spearfishing, and gathering with a simple rod and some artificial bait. You can already bring on board something, actually more than just something. Our oldest was really into it, and when we were in Greece, he fished all day long. We had fish everywhere. So if you have patience and determination, fishing from the boat is a great method. Then there's spearfishing, freediving fishing. You put on fins, mask, wetsuit, and grab your spear, done. And check out our series with Francesco Sina on how to learn snorkeling and freediving. Obviously, you need a bit of experience for this, and you also need to respect the sea, but it's probably the quickest and most common way to get food. And then you can collect sea urchins, shellfish, you can go gather mussels, whatever the sea has to offer really, but watch out for the rules and protected areas because fines are handed out left and right. Then there's the whole aspect of organizing things on board, stocking up smartly, storing food properly, and wasting as little as possible. And here, check out our video, Provisions on Board. You can also create small gardens on board, vegetables, herbs, sprouts, small citrus plants, simple things that don't take up much space. And if you have the space, you could even do what people used to do and keep a couple of chickens on board for eggs. French hens are small, the eggs are good, and most importantly, they don't make too much of a mess. Let me know in the comments how you would solve this issue too. Food on board. This is interesting to know. Now I'll let you in on a secret, my little secret resource. I call it the Apocalypse Pack. I'm pretty fatalistic, and in case something extreme happens, I like to think I could find a small island where I could survive. Calm and, most importantly, full. The Apocalypse Pack is nothing more than a sealed bag where I keep seeds for vegetables, fruit, basically the plants I like to eat. I know it's more of a mental exercise than a real necessity, but if it ever came down to it, how ready are you really? Are you ready to handle things on your own? Being self-sufficient when it comes to food doesn't mean having everything, it mainly means never running out of food. One aspect of autonomy on a boat that I rarely hear people talk about, but is actually fundamental, is maintenance. Because while it's true that the fewer things you have on board, the fewer things can break, it's just as true that even those few things will eventually break. The sea is a harsh environment for a boat. Salt, sun, constant vibrations, and stress. On a boat, every system and piece of equipment is often under stress, from the keel bulb all the way up to the VHF antenna. The difference between being self-sufficient and finding yourself in trouble is very simple, because self-sufficiency starts already in the harbor, or even better, in the shipyard. If you do maintenance, you anticipate problems. If you don't, sooner or later you'll have to deal with them. And often you end up dealing with them at night when it's windy and your engine dies just as you're entering the harbor. How many of you have had that happen? Sludge. Checking over the whole boat whenever you get the chance lets you prevent problems. And if you find something that doesn't seem right, you can act quickly and precisely to keep everything running smoothly. Maybe for some people, it's not the most exciting part of sailing, but knowing your own boat, as I said, is truly essential. But what do you actually do? Well, first of all, you need to have all the manuals, all the tools, and the equipment on board so you can handle maintenance and any repairs while at anchor. And so, various toolboxes containing all the sockets, screwdrivers, wrenches, pliers, pincers, testers, electrical materials, zip ties, WD-40, greases, oils, lubricants, extra gasoline, filters, belts, and a ton of other small and large pieces of equipment. Then you need to have on board the parts of the boat that are most vulnerable, or could get damaged. You need to have a spare alternator, for example, spare parts for the steering system, pumps like the water pressure pump, an extra bilge pump, and many other things. I know many sailors who even double up on their systems. That is, if one system fails for any reason, you just activate the backup system. And you're good. Once you're in the right place, you can make repairs. The main system is called redundancy, maintenance and redundancy. That's what turns a well-equipped boat into a self-sufficient one. But how much does it cost to be self-sufficient on a boat? It's not cheap to be self-sufficient. We're talking about a significant cost, because I can estimate that between solar panels, various regulators, inverters, a watermaker, wind generator, the right batteries, all the accessories we've already mentioned, plus installations, fishing gear, diving equipment, and all the consumable materials. And don't forget about a proper dinghy with a good engine and an anchoring setup that'll let you sleep more peacefully. That's a hefty expense too. I'd estimate that brings us to somewhere between 25,000 and 35,000 euros. The difference, in this case, comes down to whether you install everything yourself or hire someone. Specialized technicians. It's definitely not a small expense, but usually it gets spread out over time. In my case, for example, I've been outfitting my boat to be self-sufficient for about 5 years now. As much as possible, but I still haven't reached total self-sufficiency. Getting close. But the real question isn't how much it costs, but how much my life has changed. So start small. 1 year, get the solar panels and regulators. The next year, the batteries. Keep track of your energy use and try to improve your energy management. Especially if it's a new boat, before buying everything, you need to live on it for a while. That's the only way to avoid buying things you don't need. Change your mindset. Okay, let's say now you have a boat equipped to be self-sufficient and you can afford to be autonomous. But you know what? True autonomy comes from how you experience the sea, from the expectations you set in your mind, because that's the real limit. Today, as city dwellers, we're used to having everything right away. In the city, everything seems endless. Energy, water, food, there's plenty of it everywhere. But when you live on a boat, you have to earn almost everything you use. And it still takes time to manage everything, and you really change your approach to consumption. Because the less you waste, the less you depend on, and the freer you are. And that's just a fact. And you know what's the most interesting thing? that in the end, you realize you don't really miss anything, or almost nothing. In the end, as you can see, being self-sufficient on a boat is a compromise. It'll never be like the life you had at home. But it means having the chance to enjoy nature and live a different kind of life for as long as possible. And without having to go back to port every other day, and most importantly, without depending on anyone or anything. When boats become self-sufficient systems, they also become a small example for all the others to follow. Freedom isn't about sailing off into infinity and beyond, but about having the ability to do it without ever having to stop. But now I'm curious, how long could you live on your boat today without going ashore? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to share this video with that friend of yours who, after a couple of spritzes, always talks about how great it would be to sail off toward the horizon. Wishing you good self-sufficiency on your boat and fair winds. Not too little, not too much, but just right.